how do you think the Bridges ministry can help and love the older generation or like longtime members or like, married couples? Like, how do you think Bridges can help those people or love on those people?
Babysit. Just
Uh,
kidding.
guys, did you hear that? Babysitting.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hello, listeners of B-Sides. Today we have Mr. Hoon here as our guest. Mr. Hoon, could you say hello? Hello to the listeners, please? So yeah, I didn't know you were a ski patrol person. How did you get into that? How does one start that?
First, you have to have the permission of your wife. And second, you have to go through quite a bit of training for like a year. Because there's obviously a test or certification at the end. But skiing is something I grew up with since I was like 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
I started in Korea and fell in love with it. And when we came to the States, my dad would take me and my brother and sometimes my mom skiing every weekend, literally.
Where did you guys live at the time?
We lived here.
Oh.
Actually, it was in Reston, but eventually moved to Vienna. But literally, we would go every weekend. And had we known what a season pass was, we would have probably saved a lot of money. But instead, we went to the ticket window every weekend and bought a ticket. Of course, my dad would always say I was 12 and under, even though I was like 15 to get the discounted ticket. But yeah, it's something I grew up with. So when I was young, I would see these guys in these red jackets with the crosses on their back. And I was like, wow, they're so cool. I want to be like them. And so it's something that's always been in the back of my mind, even growing up. And even after I became an adult. And one day we went out skiing in West Virginia, and it's a really beautiful place called Timberline. And at the bottom of the mountain, they had a banner for recruiting ski patrol. So I told my wife, I'm just going to go in and just find out. She's like, okay. And then eventually she gave me permission.
Oh, when was that? When you went to the booth and did the training?
That was
and all
probably
that?
like 6-7 years ago.
Oh.
I don't think it was like 8 years ago or anything.
Do you do it every year?
I did. Gosh, I'm trying to remember because COVID kind of screwed things up. But
Right.
yeah, you go every year. You serve the entire season. I think by NSP, which is National Ski Patrol Standards, you have to put in minimum of 12 sessions.
Per season?
Maybe 15 sessions. Yeah, per season. So you go and you really just work the mountain.
Oh. So are those sessions actually necessary?
Yeah, because so a lot of people don't know this, but we have to actually open up the mountain, or we have to give the permission for the mountain to open.
Oh.
Each ski patrol has to go on different trail and slope and just look at things from the safety perspective. Make sure all the like the snow making machines are covered up, so people don't ski and hurt themselves into it. And so we go around and set up bamboo sticks around things that aren't safe, so people are more cautious about it. And so, yeah, we have to open up the mountain and then close the mountain at the end of the day, besides helping people when they're hurt
Okay.
or what.
So do you have to travel there every like weekend or whenever you did the patrol thing, or did you ever
Yeah.
stay there?
So when we're in West Virginia, since it's a little bit further away, we would rent this townhouse for the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole season is only what, 3 to 4 months, and then go up practically every weekend and spend time there.
Mm.
When it was at Whitetail, we did that also for a season, but it's close enough where you can drive up. So sometimes I would just drive up for my session, drive back, and then drive back up again the next morning and fulfill my session.
Oh, any memorable moments, fun stories, scary moments?
Fun stories. I don't know if it's fun stories, but thankfully I haven't seen a lot of blood or compound fractures where bones are sticking out of somebody's arms or
Yeah.
anything like that. But I've had quite a share of helping people who've hurt their uh, wrist or arms and just legs, and bandage them up, take them down on a sled, and take them to the next level of care.
Uh,
Um, but yeah,
is your wife and your kids, are they good at skiing or snowboarding?
they're uh, they're pretty good. Um, Kids, I say, are still learning. They're not like parallel skiing, but they're pretty good. They've gone down black diamonds. My son is the only one in my family that snowboards,
Okay.
and everybody else skis. But it's funny, my wife will last longer than me on a mountain. She's like the Energizer Bunny, where she just skis, goes up, skis, goes up, skis, just constant cycle. And she'll go up and down, up and down, up and down,
Never
up
ending,
and
never
down.
ending.
Yeah. I think it's because she doesn't ski that aggressively, so she has more longevity.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
yeah.
How many concussions do you see?
Oof. Uh, well, we can't really diagnose whether a person had concussion, but I mean, I haven't really seen any major concussions
Okay.
myself, but my peers or my other patrollers have had instances where um, people have even died on the hill, and they had to administer CPR on the sled while going down the hill.
Oh my gosh.
But
So they
so
like witnessed it
yeah,
firsthand.
yeah, yeah, it can get pretty serious. And at the mountain that I was working one season, they actually had a lift tower fall, and a whole group of people that were on the lift just basically were slingshot down to the ground. And I know they had a medevac helicopter come to just as a standby. Nobody actually had to fly out of that, but
Okay.
it can get pretty serious.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But luckily, I wasn't there.
And so do you, after COVID, have you started up again, like doing the sessions again?
After COVID, no.
So what happens to your certification?
It runs out because you have to get recertified every year, about this time frame,
Okay.
maybe a month before. You have to go through some tests, and you have to get recertified. But I haven't done that in the past 2 years
Mm-hmm.
now.
Have you been skiing at all in the past 2 years?
Of course I
Oh.
have.
What about skiing is the most fun to you, do you think?
Uh, I think a couple things. One, just being out in nature on top of a mountain, seeing the views where hopefully everything's covered in white, but sometimes it's not.
Hmm.
Since we have a lot of man-made snow here. And it's exhilarating. Sometimes it's the speed. Sometimes it's just being out in a very cold and brisk weather and making turns on snow. It's a lot of fun.
Would you say you're a good teacher?
I don't know about that.
So you're just like, just do it.
I think my wife would probably say I am, but it's not the easiest thing because you're in essence you're like babysitting that person, and you lose out on your opportunity to go fast.
Yeah, like your own time, your own fun time.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, because I had zero idea that you did that until I heard about it from someone. But so this season, as you know, we were like trying to talk about more so grace stories, and it doesn't have to be exactly like a turning point moment, but just like a God moment when you felt his realness in your life. And on the other hand, when you didn't, and how you overcame those slumps and things like that. And so I was just wondering if you could share a few things about that. And my question to kind of, get this started is if you grew up in a Christian household and like grew up in church or not.
Um. Okay, so answering the last question first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian home ever since I can remember it. My grandparents were Christians and they had always gone to church. And so my parents grew up in a church environment, and that's where they also met and eventually got married, obviously.
Mm.
So for me, even while we were in Korea, we came to the States when I was like 9. I remember growing up in a church environment
Mm-hmm.
or church family or whatever you want to call it, um, and going to church every Sunday. Dressing up was an important factor, which I really didn't like, but it's something that I grew up in.
Yeah.
What was the other questions? Grace stories. I don't have a specific grace story in mind, but
Mm-hmm.
I do remember the first grace story that I told or shared with a congregation, maybe not the congregation, entire congregation, but a small group of people at church, was after Pastor Owen had come and served as our senior pastor um, at our church. Because our church had gone through a lot up until I would say Pastor Owen came.
Mm-hmm.
We were still in Vienna, and there was not talk, but there was a motion to move our church to Centerville
Mm-hmm.
with KCPC because we were I guess more or less a child of KCPC, right? We were born out of their ministry, and so it was very natural for us to move with them, especially with Reverend Lee, who had the vision of establishing the EM ministry back then. So I don't think there was any question in my mind that we were going to move
Mm-hmm.
to Centerville, but there was a pastor back then named Harold. This is not to say that I'm pointing fingers or anything like that or put
Mm-hmm.
blame, but there were some resistance, and his thought and vision didn't align with the move, and he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to stay in Vienna, but you know, I would say the rest of the congregation didn't want to stay in Vienna. We thought we were supposed to move, so there were some disagreements there, and it was at a time when our church was probably the biggest
Mm-hmm.
it had ever been, roughly a congregation of 600 people or so. Um, and because of the vision that he had being different from the rest of the congregation, he stepped down.
Mm-hmm.
And our church went through a lot of turmoil and different things. Not in a not in the most positive way,
Mm-hmm.
but there was basically some restructuring, and there was a process of us looking for a new head pastor to lead our congregation, and through all that, the church went through a lot of struggles, and what was 600 went down to maybe a couple hundred people. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was a lot of pairing and people leaving the church. And so for me, that was a really tough time because I grew up at this church, right?
Right.
I've been at this church for like 35 years now.
Oh, wow.
Um, I've been here since I was in seventh grade. And to see the church that was flourishing pared down to a mere couple hundred or even less was really tough. And um, luckily, the base of the congregation, or the core members of the congregation, really stepped up then and helped more or less carry the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't to say we were very content where we were, right?
Right. Yeah.
We felt like we were skin and bones at that point. We had already moved to Centerville. And for me, I didn't really know, but I was harboring a lot of bitterness in my heart.
Ah.
And for me, it came down to basically one person, and that was Pastor Harold. Um, but what's interesting is, and oftentimes we say God has a lot of humor, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's funny that we eventually hired Pastor Owen, who happened to be Harold's best friend. Um,
Oh.
but he came to our church at a very broken time in his life as well, and uh, he was unanimously voted on through the session and through our congregation to be our senior pastor. And obviously, that there was a reason for that, and it. Where am I going here?
No, no, it's
um, it was, I would say, by God's providence that God brought Pastor Owen and his family here, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I think it was about a year after he had been at our church. He had asked, I don't know if he had asked me directly or somebody to tell a grace story, and somehow I was the one to tell this grace story, and um, maybe it was a little bit after a year, because during Pastor Irwin's time here, he invited Harold to come and speak to the
Mm-hmm.
congregation. And at that time, as I had shared, I had a lot of bitter feelings toward him.
Yeah.
I began questioning, why is he coming back?
Right.
We don't need him to come back and speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously he did. And I distinctly remember having a very heavy feeling that morning and going to church in anticipation of him walking down the aisle, or maybe seeing him up front in the corner getting ready for the start of worship. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting down and being very, again, very heavy and anxious, probably not in the most positive way, but and went through praise and prayer or whatever, and it was time for him to speak. And my ears were just like very open.
Mm-hmm.
And he stepped up and he started the sermon with a benediction. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And uh-oh. Sometimes I still choke about this or
Mm-hmm.
choke up. Um, he started with a benediction, and maybe because of my heaviness or because of the bitter hard feelings that I was harboring, um, God broke me right there.
Mm.
And I was literally in tears.
Yeah.
Of course, it was very hard for me to understand then, but eventually I was able to process this. And I know I had shared with my Mexico team, but
Yeah.
one of the things is we tend to forget about God's sovereignty in all situations. And so he revealed to me his sovereignty, right? It, this is where I started to feel like we were part of the Egyptians, not the Egyptians, Israelites. Sorry. Egyptians were chasing us. But the Israelites, where they had to go through many years of suffering in order for God to build up a new generation of congregational leaders
Mm.
or his people. And without suffering, we wouldn't be able to see that. We have to suffer in our lives to appreciate really his sovereignty and how he cares for us and yada yada yada, right? But even to this day, as you can hear right now, he tells me that he's still in control, and that he cares for our church. Um, um, and so, in many ways, I feel like sometimes our church is going through some sort of a valley again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether people know or not, there hasn't been an exodus to the extent of what we had before, but there has been some exodus. And for me, in many ways, I do understand the feelings, but in many ways, I also feel like this is something that we sometimes have to go through, right?
Yeah.
our church had been doing very well since Pastor Owen came, and maybe it's because we've been so content and possibly lost sight of God, where maybe or we weren't quite. Gosh, I have to be careful how I say this, but to not offend anyone or
Yeah, no, I think we like um are, under the understanding of what you're trying to convey
yeah,
here, but it just seems like what I'm sensing is that church really is like family for you. And
yes,
church really is a big piece and part of your life where even to this day, those experiences and happenings are still very memorable in your heart to the point where it would get you feeling these things even today, because that was, many years ago.
yeah.
And I kind of had a question of, in those times where you had some of this bitterness, what did your conversations with God look like? Like what were you saying to him? Did this have any effect on your belief, or was it more just conversational with God?
Ah, gosh, I don't quite remember on that front,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like through every struggle in any type of situation, God's trying to tell you or teach you something, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I was trying to understand what was going on, but being a child, like as with any of my kids or what, you want to pout and not understand and have it your
Mm-hmm.
way, and you don't really try to make sense of things then, and you just react to whatever the situation is. Honestly, I don't remember what prayers I said back then, but in hindsight of things, it there's a lot more clarity in what happened. So it's right now, if I had to say a prayer, I would probably ask for just an understanding of uh, what's going on, his heart, and not for me to not harbor any bitter feelings,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, as history would say, at least in my life, I want to blame somebody, and I have
Mm.
to be careful in how I approach this, not to blame somebody, right?
Right.
You have to understand that God is sovereign and He has a purpose in this, whether He wants to restructure or change things or what, for me to just have a heart that understands and kind of go with it, but also uh, be prayerful and not complaining. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think, that mindset you have now is kind of like a growth compared to the past?
Yeah, I think I've grown somewhat from the past through this experience. Uh, but I, uh, but it's hard to take away the emotional aspects of things,
Oh,
right? Because
yeah.
this is just how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, I have to understand that I can't simply just run away from this. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know. I obviously don't know the steps that needs to be taken in order for things to get better or improve or what. But for me, I just need to be patient. Um, hopefully with some prayer. Um, because without it, I don't think I would have patience to go through this wisely. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Through all these changes, was there a time that, or not a time, but through all these changes, has your idea of a church body changed?
Um, what I've realized more and more is that CCPC, or back then KCPCEM, is my home. Um, this is where I grew up. This is where I got baptized, professed my faith. This is where I got married. This is where I had my kids born, baptized, and hopefully come to faith in. Right. So for me, in all aspects of my life, CCPC is my home, and I think that thought has been reinforced to me more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to the day where my kids are growing up and they go to college, they start their own careers, but still come back home, right? Come back here professing their faith and maybe even um, growing their family here. But if it's not, it's okay. But what I've realized more and more is that Christ Central is my home. Um, Sometimes we may not have the siblings or the cousins that we like here, uh, and that's okay. But this is the body in which, or the home in which, where my faith has been tested and has grown. So, if anything, I would just say my thought about church has just grown to a deeper depth in that way here.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. What does it mean to love on your church family nowadays?
Um, uh, Gosh, that's a really tough one because it's something that I haven't been really practicing.
Mm,
But after a missions trip, uh, Sister G shared a little, what do you call it, article or what, about how our churches in America has fallen away or doesn't really know what corporate prayer is.
mm-hmm.
So I think I need to pray more, not just by myself, but corporately,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully at Wednesday night prayer meetings. I'm really setting myself up for failure here, but because I know it's tough, but that's just something that's really lacking,
Mm,
right? Because I used to go to Wednesday night prayer meetings back then, especially when earlier days when Pastor Owen came and stuff. But at some point in my life, I've fallen away from that, and there's a huge importance about corporate prayer.
mm-hmm.
Basically, pleading in unison to God, right? And not just individually. So
Right.
I forget what the question was, but
No, it's okay. I think
it
you
was leading
answered
to
it.
that.
And I kind of want to close our time with in what ways would you love to see your home grow?
Oh gosh.
Home as in our church.
Yeah. I think in many ways it already is or has been. I love seeing the Bridges community at our church. The young professionals that are so together, that lean on each other, that are uh, so friendly to each other. I don't know. I love seeing Facebook posts or Instagram posts of people eating together, right?
Oh,
It's
fellowship, yeah.
yeah, fellowship,
Just hanging out.
hanging out, sharing life together. That's such a beautiful scene. And for me, at a later age group or life stage in life, I love seeing CGs flourish, meeting together, fellowshipping, uh, and having Bible studies together, and
Mm-hmm.
just sharing life together. And my greater hope in that is that we instill that same familyness to our children where they'll want that later on, right?
Yeah.
I- as parents, I don't think we could ask for anything more than our children coming to faith. Such an important thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you commit to that when they're being baptized at an early age as infants, and just the act of baptism does not mean they're saved, but you're really professing and committing yourself to raising your children the right way. And so at the end, I hope our children see the CGs, the Bridges group, how they're flourishing, and seeing how more or less what a Christian life should be. And I hope they really desire that as they grow up, through youth group, through college ministry, through Bridges, and eventually for you, even Wajin, uh, to find a husband, to find find family, and grow up here and find Christ Central to be your home,
Mm-hmm.
um, a home away from home. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I know I said that that was our, wrap up, but kind of I thought of something where you mentioned
A
bridges
trick.
and I'm in and since I am part of that, group, how do you think the bridges ministry can help and love the older generation or like longtime members or like, married couples? Like, how do you think bridges can help those people or love on those people?
Babysit. Just
Uh,
kidding.
guys, did you hear that? Babysitting.
I'm just kidding, but you know what? In some ways, it's being real honest because we have a lot of families with young children,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when we had our young children and we had CGs, it was so hard for us to get together and have personal, real intimate personal times together. And there were times when uh, people or brothers and sisters from similar ministry to Bridges would come and help out.
Mm-hmm.
It was so helpful, right? Because now the parents could step away in their CG and meet with other friends, and do some real intimate sharings. And so maybe for the younger families, that would help a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's that's just us on the receiving end. I think us as midlife stagers, we have failed in many ways of not reaching down or reaching across the aisle to you guys, right?
Mm.
Um, we seem to be happy in our own little ways and content. And maybe it's because we're just too busy with our um children's activities. But uh, I realize we can't just demand. So I'll just say we failed you in many ways. But for me, it's really encouraging to see you guys at church on Sundays, the group thriving and leaning on each other and just growing, and even helping out with a lot of them helping out with youth group. Uh, and just to do a little plug in for Director Heidi, I
Mm-hmm.
know, children's ministry really appreciates you guys, right? Because without you guys, we wouldn't have a children's ministry, right?
Mm.
So I think if we had to ask for anything, it would be to help with our children,
Mm.
whatever stage they're whatever life stage they're at, whether it's toddler stage or elementary, central kid stage, or central youth. Central youth is just so, I don't know, it's such a vital stage in life
Mm-hmm.
where many things get defined for these youth. Like for my daughter Ashlyn and my son Mason, who are going through the P stage in life.
Mm-hmm.
These are defining moments for them. And
Yeah.
for them, I mean, if I think back in my life, this was the defining moment where I came to faith. So maybe helping out in that area. And obviously, you guys already are. So um, I don't know. Just either maintaining or devoting yourselves more
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
growth of the church as a body.
Yes.
And obviously, like I said, we as midlife stagers have a lot to learn and do in reaching out to you guys and seeing what we can do for you. So maybe I should turn the table here and interview you.
Oh.
What can we do for you?
Well, I think that'll be a question for a time when you're the host and I'm the guest. So, Mr. Hoon, if you're interested in joining the podcast
Oh,
team
wow.
as one of our hosts,
Oh.
that would be great.
Oh my goodness. See, I dug
but
myself a hole here.
But yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think your love for our church and what you consider your home and, our home is very encouraging. Thank you for your humility and vulnerability. I really think that what you said about the bridges was very encouraging and affirming, encouraging for those who maybe aren't serving in that capacity. Maybe like that would be the push for them to, if they were on the fence, to decide to serve in that way. For those who already are, I think it was a very affirming time where, they can feel and sense that they are appreciated and loved by their older brothers and sisters of the
Mhm.
church. And so thank you so much for your time. And that's it, you guys. We'll catch
Sure.
you next week.
Thank you. Bye bye.